Well, President Trump today standing up in the face of the endless efforts of the radical left to subvert his presidency.
So many leaders came up to me today and they said, "Sir, what you go through, no president has ever gone through, and it's so bad for your country." People laugh at the stupidity of what they've asked for.
Earlier, I talked with Vice President Mike Pence, and we began our conversation with what can only be categorized now as the wide-open conflict between Republicans and Democrats.
Well, the first thing it means, Lou, is that, as the president said a week ago, he did nothing wrong. The transcript reveals that despite reckless accusations in the media and by Democrats on Capitol Hill that the president had somehow threatened aid to Ukraine to demand a specific act, that it just never happened. The transcript is clear on that point. The ironic thing is the only time it did happen that we know about is when former Vice President Joe Biden threatened over $1 billion in aid to Ukraine in exchange for a specific act. But in this case, the president's been completely vindicated. And I think the American people look at this in the context not just of this week or this month, but really the last 2.5 years. I mean, 63 million Americans voted for President Donald Trump and to put this administration in the White House. And from the day after the election, the Democrats have been trying to overturn the results of that election. 2.5 years of reckless accusations of obstruction, collusion with the Russians, all of that panned out to be nothing. No collusion, no obstruction. Last week, Democrats were actually making baseless allegations against a Supreme Court justice calling for his impeachment. And now this week, before she had any of the facts, even though she knew that the transcript was going to be released today, Speaker Nancy Pelosi initiates an impeachment inquiry into this presidency. And I think the American people have had enough. But at the end of the day, Lou, I think it's because they know they can't run against this president's record. They can't run against a record of accomplishment that you talk about every night on this broadcast. And so they've decided to continue to look for one more way to try and overturn the election. And it's just not going to work. The American people see through it. And now that they have the transcript, they can see once again that the president did nothing wrong, that he had a conversation with a world leader, that he spoke about issues that were appropriate, issues related to our strong relationship with Ukraine, and it was nothing more than that.
And there's obviously, from the tone of the transcript, a very good relationship between the two leaders. And there had been other conversations complimenting him on his election, complimenting Zelensky on winning the parliament,
right.
And Zelensky talking about ridding Ukraine of corruption, the very essence of what the president is concerned about.
Lou, it's so important that you bring that up, because this was actually a call following President Zelensky's win in the parliamentary elections. But his presidential victory was all built on an anti-corruption message.
Right.
And so the president wanted to speak about that. I mean, the United States of America has stood strong with Ukraine ever since the Russian military overran Crimea and has been underwriting a savage war in the Donbas province of Ukraine. Different from the last administration, we've actually been providing defensive weapons. The Obama administration was sending them blankets and pillows. But this president said, nope, we're going to stand for the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine. We've provided them with weapons, the ability to defend themselves. But the president was concerned about corruption, and seeing this new leader rise in President Zelensky on a message of anti-corruption, the president raised that issue. They both spoke about it. And that and frankly, the lack of European support were both issues the president raised in this call, and frankly, has continued to raise throughout this administration. They were issues that I raised when I met with President Zelensky in Warsaw not long ago.
And we also are watching a president right now and a vice president who are standing tall, together, united. The party, it's a question mark, because as we're talking, one Republican senator is saying anonymously, and because he does not want to be straightforward about it, as so many in this town occasionally do, that he thinks that releasing the transcript was a mistake because it means that he or she will have to fight for the president, for the vice president, for this administration.
Well, look, we're very heartened by the support already since the transcript was released on Capitol Hill. I mean, Senator Lindsey Graham really focused the issue earlier today, where he said last week his only concern was whether or not the president had threatened aid to Ukraine for a specific act. And he said, looking at the transcript, you can see that clearly didn't happen. Despite the fact that Democrats were off repeating that allegation, our opponents in the media were off repeating that allegation on no basis whatsoever. But now we're hearing strong support from Capitol Hill. And I think they also appreciate the fact that this president said this was a perfect call early on. And despite the fact that it was a tough call for the president, because our leader has to have the ability to have candid conversation with leaders around the world. But at the end of the day, the president believed that this was a moment for transparency. This was a moment to give the American people the facts. And now that the facts are out, the American people can see that this was an appropriate call, talking about appropriate issues between the president of the United States and the president of Ukraine. And there was no threat. There was no quid pro quo in this call. And the president felt it was important that the American people see that for themselves.
In fact, the transcript reveals Zelensky saying to President Trump, you have been my teacher because of as the role model for winning his election. An unexpected win for Zelensky as well as, of course, for the president in 2016.
Well, President Zelensky had a career in television.
Right. Oh, that's a wonderful
our
preparation.
president spent some time on television himself with great success. And when I met with President Zelensky in Poland, we sat down and we talked about that. And I know in their meeting today that they'll make that very same connection, not just on a shared background, but the fact that they're both non-conventional leaders who are willing to lead from the front and drive for real progress. And I think, at the end of the day, I'd say that again, Lou. The present company accepted. Most of the media spends their time focusing on whatever the latest criticism of this president or this administration is, instead of focusing on an amazing record that in the midst of reckless accusations over the last 2.5 years, we've rebuilt our military, we've revived the American economy through tax cuts, rolling back regulation, an energy revolution. We've seen more than 150 conservatives appointed to our courts at every level. We're standing tall in the world again, and it's thanks all to the leadership of President Donald Trump. And whatever the Democrats want to do with this latest allegation, with this latest effort, whatever it is, I promise you, this president, his vice president, this administration is going to keep fighting to deliver for the American people. And that's why I think President Trump's going to get 4 more years in the White House. And with all the shenanigans going on Capitol Hill, I think we're going to reelect a Republican majority to the House of Representatives.
We're back now with our exclusive interview with Vice President Mike Pence. The vice president reacting to the president's strong rejection of globalism before the United Nations General Assembly.
The speech at the United Nations this week by the President of the United States was historic, and it was important, because in his first address to the United Nations, he gave that view of America first. And remember, he received a round of applause, which is very rare at the UN, when he said, "We will always put the interest of America first, and we expect you to put the interest of your countries first."
Right.
And it was greeted with applause. But yesterday he unpacked what we've been doing as a nation, putting our country first, putting the interest of our people first. And all of it is in the context of the president, as you said, making it clear that this is an administration and a president that have rejected the globalist march that was weakening the American economy, weakening our borders and immigration laws, and moving America down a pathway of multinational trade deals that will ultimately weaken our strength for generations to come. The president's rejected all of that, but he demonstrated yesterday that as we've been strengthening our country, And we've been standing up for the belief that the future belongs to patriots and to citizens of nations. That he also made it very clear that we're back to leading on the world stage. I mean, I can't tell you how many leaders around the world have told me in private conversations how grateful they are to have a president, once again, who embraces his role as leader of the free world. And this week at the United Nations, the president laid out our agenda. He laid out what we've done for the American people, but he also laid out a determination to provide American leadership to confront some of the most intractable challenges in the world. And it's all what we call promises made, promises kept, and the president gave a full accounting of that to leaders around the planet.
And the American people, as they listen to that speech, understand that globalism is, if not a dead, but certainly decaying philosophy. And by the way, he has now support of scholars and think tanks, and some of them are awakening to new possibilities because of the leadership of the Trump administration. I want to close by asking you about the direction of the Republican Party, how you're going to galvanize and work against what is a bloodthirsty Democratic Party that they seem to be winning more fights than they're losing, and the Republicans don't seem to have the same passion, the same commitment, aside, of course, from you and the president. As I look at the Senate and I look at the House, I scratch my head and I wonder, what did you all do to deserve such tepid support from the very people who should be excitedly following it?
Well, first let me say, the president and I are very grateful for the support that we've had from Leader McConnell and Republicans in the Senate. 153 conservatives confirmed to our federal courts, including 2 Supreme Court justices. We are on a pathway for a historic number of principled men and women who will uphold liberties in our Constitution to our courts. We're also very grateful for Leader Kevin McCarthy and the way that he and Steve Scalise have marshaled House Republicans around one time after another, defending this president, defending this administration, standing strong, not just in the 2 years where we were able to pass tax cuts and roll back regulation and unleash American energy, but even in the midst of this Democrat majority in the House of Representatives, it's been House Republicans that have been in the fight. But I think, to your point, the way we're going to win this election, and I believe the American people are going to give President Donald Trump 4 more years in the White House, and we're going to put a Republican majority back in the House of Representatives, is really because of the choice between freedom and socialism. I mean, the truth is that Republicans now, under this president's leadership, have a record of how freedom works, how when we put America first, when we stand up for the rule of law, when we secure our borders, and then we unleash the economy through less taxes, less regulation, more American energy, and trade deals that put American jobs and American workers first, that it all comes roaring back. 6.3 million new jobs, unemployment at a 50-year low. African Americans and Hispanic Americans have the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded. It's an incredible story to tell about how freedom works. Freedom works when we put America first and defend the freedom of the American people. The contrast on the other side is remarkable. Lou, you and I have known each other a long time. I never thought I'd live to see the day that one of the 2 major parties in the United States of America would openly advocate an economic system that has impoverished millions for generations and robbed the liberties of people around the world in the last century. That system is socialism. I mean, whoever the Democrat nominee is, their party has been overrun by radical politics, left-wing ideas, and socialism masquerading as the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and a whole range of issues that will infringe on the freedom of the American people, set us back on a pathway of economic decline. And I'm going to tell you, when we take that case, and when our team running for office for election and re-election on Capitol Hill takes that team to the American people, you give the American people a choice between freedom and socialism, they're going to choose freedom every time.
Mr. Vice President, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lou. Great to be with you.
All best.